with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, there's a whole lot going on this week, but the coronavirus, it just seems to be going from bad to worse. And I don't believe we fully understand what the economic impact of this could be. And what we're finding now, China, I guess since they're going to be folks from around the world going there, various health officials and experts to try to contain this, I guess they figured that they better come clean. And so they say, the way we're calculating this, was wrong. And by the way, there's 15,000 more cases and another more or less 250 deaths that we haven't yet reported. Whereas a day or two ago, they're saying, hey, look, it's going down. It's going down. The number of cases, the number of deaths every day for the last few days have been going down. Maybe this thing has peaked. A little good news there. But now this bombshell that there's so much, many more cases than they originally had owned up to.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting is that as of this morning, China has still not allowed our health workers into ground zero. They're not at ground zero where this whole thing started. They're on the peripheral of it, and the government's not letting them in. So the CDC and the WHO folks who really know how to do this and work on it and lock it down like the Ebola thing that they did years ago, they're not able to get into exactly where they need to be to understand the nature of the microbes, to understand the nature of the virus, so they can then do something about it and mitigate the expansion of that disease. So, and you're right. I mean, this week we found out it was worse than we thought it was. And it's having an effect. I mean, it's having an effect in interesting ways. I mean, believe this or not, in Chicago and in New York, and this is no joke. I have a son, no joke, that reservations at Chinese restaurants are down by 50%. I mean, that's outrageous. It has nothing to do with China virus. People are really concerned about it. Ralph Lauren is saying their net profits could be down $35 to $40 million for the quarter because they're having such a bad time. And many of their stores are closed in China right now. And that's
a big brand in Asia. What they're saying is all that loss is coming from the people in Asia who love that brand.
And they also they make their brand there. I mean, if you look at Ralph Lauren Polo, they're made all over the place, but a lot of them is made in China.
That's right.
So this is very interesting to see where the markets go with this. And it's it's sort of like a dark market that they can go into on a temporary basis, because if you can't get the parts and people are not working and they can't, even if they open up the manufacturing plants, you have a manufacturing plant, if they open up manufacturing plants, they can't get the workers to come back to work because a lot of them are quarantined. So it's a very gray area right now, and I think the next week or so is going to be interesting, maybe sooner than 2 weeks, maybe just this week coming up, where it's going to go.
Let's talk about something that's on a positive note right now, and something that we've talked a lot about is apprenticeships. Mm-hmm. And, creating jobs in America, of course, getting our factories and making our factory manufacturing segment very, very vibrant. It's something that we talk a lot about. I don't think we really know, though, what that means. And there's a lot of parts to that. Parts meaning, we got to get supplies of parts and supply chain and all of that. That's right, in the literal sense. But in the figurative sense, a very big part of being successful in manufacturing is having the skills. As a U.S. manufacturer myself, having the skills of people who are machine operators, CNC operators. I mean, these machines that we use in manufacturing today are very, very sophisticated. The maintenance of those machines, the operations of those machines, the engineering and the drawings and the draftsmanship that goes into the products before you can even send them to these machines for parts to be formed and built and so forth. We have a real skills shortage here in the United States. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to train our people, for these jobs, many jobs? I mean, plumbers and electricians and carpenters and all sorts of jobs, that's out there. And a lot of things like in tool making, this is a big one. What's the big advantage of China over the United States? Is that they have the whole tool making industry really at a very high level, operating at a very high level. And these are jobs that are generational. I mean, it's jobs and skills that are passed down from generation to generation. And once you lose it, how do you get it back? Now, we've lost a lot of our tool making capabilities in this country. And that's why China is kicking our butts in manufacturing, because they have this huge advantage over us. It's through apprenticeships and people who know that and pass that knowledge down. We're very pleased to have with us the Assistant Commissioner, Kenyatta Lovett, from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and they're focused on this. They have ideas about it, and they're being successful at it. Kenyatta, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what are you doing there in Tennessee to help develop and to bring about these apprenticeships? And how have you managed this program, and what can we learn about it for the rest of the country?
Absolutely, and I want to zoom back out a little bit and say that first, Tennessee has been really big on understanding that every Tennessean needs some education beyond a high school degree, and for nearly 10 years we have been on this push of making sure we have the credentials within all of our Tennesseans to be eligible and successful in their jobs. But there was a missing component. It's one thing to have the education, something totally different to have the training, the skills, the experiences to be successful or even get in the front door. The apprenticeship model, which combines education and training together, we found was a viable option for really fulfilling our promise of ensuring that Tennesseans have a promising pathway forward in the workforce. And so officially, as of last year, we launched what is known as Apprenticeship TN, which is an aggressive expansion of apprenticeship programs across the state, bringing in apprentices in your traditional fields like in the electric fields or even manufacturing. But also our goal is to expand apprenticeships into different aspects of the industry or the economy, whether it be something in IT. We even have apprenticeships in the seamstress field. So we found that this is a very viable way for Tennesseans to earn a wage, go to school, but get the relevant skills that are going to make sure they're successful in the near and the long term. And so we're really excited about our expansion. Our goal is to get aggressive and to first start with trying to get 1,000 apprentices on the books, but our goal is to go even beyond that.
Well, I find it interesting. Tennessee's a pretty great state. It's a good state. And they're very advanced in many areas. I mean, they're one of the first states that embraced LED lighting for commercial purposes and for public purposes on their streets. And they use smart light. I mean, they're really ahead of the game. And it's interesting that they know that. Jamie Dimon this week, of course, Jamie Dimon being the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, was speaking at the Business Roundtable CEO Innovation Summit in Washington about a year ago, not this week, but about a year ago. And he was talking about ensuring that we have the folks to handle the jobs in the future, because he felt that literally by 2030, which isn't that far off if you think about it, about 30% of the U.S. labor market will need to change jobs or upgrade their skills if they want to continue to advance and have jobs and be fruitful with their lives. And the world is changing. And McKinsey and Company, of course, the great research and and innovation firm, certified that, codified that, and said we really need programs to ensure that the people are there as we create these new jobs like you're talking about, Neal. You have pretty interesting techie manufacturing jobs, and you have trouble finding really high-end people to handle this. And it sounds like the programs that we're talking about in Tennessee are kind of recognizing that and saying, let's put out a program, let's have apprenticeship programs where people can learn in real time, in the real world, how to handle jobs that are coming down the pike so they're going to be successful in the future. Sounds like Tennessee is going to the head of the class.
That's correct, and I was fortunate to hear Jamie Dimon speak a little less than a year ago. And it's when you hear a banker of his magnitude speak all about the workforce. It makes you really listen. And what he knows and what we know in our economy in Tennessee is that we mentioned about, manufacturing, and Tennessee is definitely an auto manufacturing core. But if you go into a lot of these manufacturing facilities, you're going to see very few people and a lot of systems going on to produce the products that we need to keep our economy humming. But there are two fields that to your point, that I think, and what Jamie Dimon's trying to say in terms of being ready for what's next, that have a highly transformative effect on the overall economy. Just two that I can think of. One being in the agriculture field, where drone technology, other types of technology are being used to grow our vegetables and our fruits and manage farms. That's an emerging field in Tennessee where, yes, we need to have apprenticeship programs so that students can connect learning with work. And the other one is eventually we will get to a point where the majority of our cars are probably going to be electric cars. So for Tennessee to be an auto manufacturing core, what does that mean for our workforce that traditionally produces combustible engines? What do we need to transition in training and work experiences to make sure that they're ready for batteries and more electrical work and maybe even more chemical work that's going to run these cars? Those are just two of probably a long list of things that Jamie Dimon and what you're talking about are transformative things in the workforce that we have to give them work experiences. We have to make sure education is aligned, and apprenticeships is a great way to carry out that transitionary effort.
Hey, that was great. Folks, we're with Assistant Commissioner Kenyatta Lovett from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, learning a lot about apprenticeships. We're going to continue this discussion here just in a moment. Still a lot more to talk about. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with the Assistant Commissioner from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Kenyatta Lovett. So, Kenyatta, you started to mention some of the apprenticeships and some of the skills of the future. I mean, that's really fascinating. Drones being used to run farms. Man, I didn't see that one coming, but I guess that makes a lot of sense. Yes, the transition to more electric or hybrid type of vehicles and the people who are going to work on those and who are going to service those. What do you see in the traditional manufacturing, like machine operators, CNC operators, CAD operators, and the sort of skills there? Tool making, as an example, to form metals or to mold plastics, a very, very important part of the manufacturing economy.
Yeah, a lot of those fields will remain not as automated as others. Definitely tool and die is one that now that we learn more about the critical nature of it, it's very high skills in math and science. We have great programs through our colleges of applied technology in Tennessee that train for that. So there are several professions, what they call the middle skill jobs, that are going to remain somewhat of a manual nature, definitely high on the problem-solving side, definitely, especially for journeymen, a great place to start in an apprenticeship that are still going to be high demand, definitely going to be high wage, but are viable pathways for our young folks and our adults. When I mentioned sort of the young high school graduates, when we know that vocational education, we sort of went away from that for a while. What we've seen in Tennessee is major investments in making sure that that student has a viable pathway. If they want to go to college, fine, but we consider college not to just be a university, but our colleges of applied technology and our community colleges. But we want to make sure that if they can get out of high school with some skills, some credential, we know that they can be successful throughout their path if college doesn't work out for them. So when you mention tool and die, and I can think of the HVAC trades, welding is definitely an obvious one where apprenticeships are amenable to success for that student or for that individual. The sky's the limit on what we can create in Tennessee.
Tennessee, this is a good conversation to have relating to a state that's done well economically and has been very active in it, such as a right-to-work state. And as a result of that, you've had quite a few corporations move into the Tennessee market. I mean, you've had a lot of car manufacturing.
Automobile,
Yeah, I mean, car manufacturing is state of the art. And it's got to be sharp on top of everything that they're doing, and it requires some pretty interesting technical people working there. So as you see that, it seems like your program would help ensure the future of those industries that are coming there and other industries that you'd want to have there, maybe more aerospace industries. These are high technical jobs requiring very special real-time skills. Do you think the program that you're in right now, I'd like you to address that, looking out 10, 15 years, it looks like you're laying the groundwork for the success in a decade and a half from now as well?
Exactly, and you think about it, it's one thing to graduate from college or a training program, but when you get to an employer, they want you to be trained specifically on their processes, the way in which they carry out their productive endeavors. The apprenticeship program provides you the best of both worlds. So if I'm an employer and you're providing me resources, tools, even supports to run an apprenticeship program, now I don't have to do as much guesswork from a graduate that comes in and I still have to train. I can build them up along the way, and then I've got a surefire workforce pipeline that I don't have to worry about retention issues or shortages in the workforce where my productive capacity is limited because I have to bring people on and hope that they will stay. The apprenticeship tool just gives so much more certainty for employers to get exactly what they want, but also to have the skills they know they need for now and in the future.
So, Kenyatta, who are these people who are offering the apprenticeships? I mean, how are you finding the companies or the people?
Yeah, what's the incentive? Do you have incentives for that?
And who are these people who are helping to train our young people in order to take on these very important roles, these very important jobs?
Sure. The interesting thing is as soon as we launched Apprenticeship TN, and this is really under the vision of the Governor, Bill Lee, definitely the strategy and the viewpoint of our Commissioner, Jeff McCord, and led by our regional director, our state director, Tyra Copas. Once we announced it, the phones have been ringing off the hooks because businesses want to take part in it. One thing that I'll mention that gives us a lot of latitude now is that instead of a business having to fill out all the federal paperwork for an apprenticeship, which you may have heard employers find it to be somewhat cumbersome sometimes, they can actually tag on to apprenticeship programs that open it up for other organizations. So our colleges of applied technology in Tennessee can be a sponsor for an apprenticeship. And so what that means is if you're a small business that only has 2 apprentices that you need, you can tag on to that apprenticeship program that's been sponsored by that college. That means that a larger employer can maybe bring in 10 or 15. You could add so many apprentices this way to the same program that has the same standards that it makes it easier for that small and mid-sized business, but it also addresses the business need of our larger employers. So we're seeing a lot of traction in that space where it's just viably to get into the apprenticeship program model. Businesses are starting to see that it's not as cumbersome as they thought. But I think the other thing that's important for this situation, given that we have such a good economy in Tennessee, there is a worker shortage, and there is also a skills gap. And so employers are a lot more open to previously non-traditional routes of bringing in a workforce pipeline that's a little different than applying for a job, having the credentials and skills, and hoping that it will work out. Now we have a much more safer pipeline through apprenticeships to make that happen. And I think that's the worker shortage has really made a lot of employers lean into this and build it the right way.
Kenyatta, that was great, and we really love what you're doing and how you're really looking into the future to create the skills. Absolutely fascinating. We can all learn a lot from Tennessee. Kenyatta Lovett, the Assistant Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Kenyatta, we really appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we have Chris Jacobs, the founder and CEO of the Juniper Research Group, and he's going to talk about Medicare for All. And now that Bernie Sanders looks like he is the front runner, not all Democrat constituents are very happy with Medicare for All, and especially the unions. You don't want to miss it. Stay around.
Made in America.
sharply higher at the open. Stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neal Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, it's onward to the Nevada caucuses. Wow, another caucus. I can't wait. I hope it doesn't happen like it did in Iowa. That was a disaster. And actually, the same software that they were developing, or that failed in Iowa, I should say, that was developed by, I guess, some folks who worked for Clinton during the 2016 campaign.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same software they're supposed to be using in Nevada, but I guess
well, they have a solution.
They're not going to be using that anymore
because it's the Clinton people. So they took their hammers out and they beat up the hard drives. That's how they fixed it. Just saying.
Well, I don't know. But, boy, what a catastrophe. But, another catastrophe that I think is brewing within the Democrat Party is what to do with Bernie Sanders, right? And this Medicare for All, I mean, he wrote the damn bill, as we know, according to him. And, that's what he's running on, a very big part of his platform. And now that some of the constituents of the Democrat Party, I mean, really, important part of the Democrat Party are the trade unions. And the trade unions are very proud of the health care plans that they, over many years, have been able to negotiate. But under Bernie's plan, they would all go away. And a powerful culinary union in Nevada has sent a warning to Bernie Sanders, saying, we like our health care plan, and you're not going to take it away. So, boy, that's going to create a division that could be very, very hurtful for the Democrat chances of not only winning the presidency, but also taking back the Senate and maintaining the House.
Well, I think it transcends that, Neal. I mean, not only are they attacking the unions and saying that, these private health plans that they get from the unions, are suspect. And the unions and the rank and file, the unions are getting annoyed with that. But if you think about what the unions represent, well, let's say you have unions representing car manufacturers. Well, they're going to get hurt if a Democrat gets in, because we're hearing what AOC is saying, and Bernie, parrots what AOC says, and Buttigieg kind of parrots everybody else and what they're saying, and so forth. So you have all these leftist ideas that you're going to eliminate that type of a fossil fuel industry. Then you're going to have the unions for those who work in the energy field. Well, you can't have that because no one likes, they don't want fossil fuels. So, I mean, everyone thought, when I grew up, I thought everyone liked dinosaurs. Anyway, so they're going after that industry. If you talk about the airplane industry, those who work in the crew members of, those unions, well, if you're going to restrict flights because they use fossil fuels, it's going to hurt that industry. I wouldn't worry about the healthcare industry. You may not have an industry anymore. So this is a very serious conversation. And I think the healthcare is a good, tip of the iceberg of where we could be going with this.
Well, Rich, we're very proud to have with us right now Chris Jacobs. He's the founder and CEO of the Juniper Research Group, and he's also the author of The Case Against Single Payer. Chris, welcome to Made in America.
Great to be with you.
So, what's brewing here with Bernie? I mean, Bernie, he seems to be the front runner. I guess it's not a clear front runner, but if there is one, I guess that would be Bernie. And his Medicare for All now, I mean, everybody's taking a really serious look at this. And it looks like the unions are not embracing his Medicare for All. I mean, is there trouble in paradise here coming up?
Sure. The left hand doesn't know what the far left hand is doing. And that's when you mention Bernie and taking seriously, sometimes that's a contradiction in terms. But I think now that people are actually looking at the bill, they're realizing that, you know what? We negotiated all these health plans under Bernie's approach. They will go away. And Bernie just assumes that unions will be able to negotiate better health benefits or increased wages. And it's funny that Bernie kind of assumes that when he talks about his single-payer plan. He's distrustful of corporations on everything else, but somehow he thinks that he can force corporations to give workers raises after their health coverage goes away.
Well, I find it amazing when you talk about this and Bernie, and the point of the matter is that he wants all that power going to the government. That's the bottom line. And if you're going to trust that, then, I mean, look what happened. Look at these folks who ran the thing in Iowa. They couldn't count. And so I think if you follow what Bernie's saying, and by the way, I don't laugh about Bernie anymore. I got to take him pretty seriously because there is a growing group. I'm not saying how big it is yet, but there are a lot of people out there, as the president pointed out. He'd rather run against Mike Bloomberg because they're not passionate about Mike as they're passionate about Bernie, and that's a dangerous thing. That concerns me. It does not concern you.
This has been a religion to folks on the left for some time. And I think it certainly predates the Bernie phenomenon going back to 2016. But folks on the left have always measured government by the amount of people that have insurance cards, the amount of people dependent on government, and always more government. That's the solution to everything. Bernie's a manifestation of it. He certainly isn't the start of it, but I think you're right that it shows where the fervor and the energy is on the far left of the Democratic Party, which wants the government to run everything.
So Medicare for all, does that mean that, and Bernie's plan, does that mean that all private insurance goes away? Like even if you wanted to buy it, you couldn't?
Correct. That means all private insurance goes away. That means Medicare goes away. Bernie Sanders' plan actually abolishes the current Medicare program. And so it's really not Medicare for all. That's a deceptive misnomer that Bernie Sanders has been using. Just like if you liked your health plan, you could keep it, and we found out that wasn't true. The idea that this is Medicare for all is absolutely false. It's Medicare for none. It abolishes the Medicare program. It abolishes the Medicaid program. It abolishes all private insurance, and it creates this new system of government insurance that supposedly is going to be wonderful, but we just have to take Bernie's word for it.
Chris, we're going to take a quick break here, but still so much more to talk about. We're together with Chris Jacobs, the founder and CEO of the Juniper Research Group, also the author of The Case Against Single Payer. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman, and we are together with Chris Jacobs, the founder and the CEO of the Juniper Research Group, and also the author of The Case Against Single Payer. So, Chris, just to be clear, healthcare providers like Aetna, United, and so forth, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, all of those are gone?
There are more than 500,000 people employed in the health insurance industry. Their jobs would certainly be in jeopardy. Some of them might end up being hired as government contractors for the government-run system. But, yeah, and all those companies, if you have stock in a 401k or an IRA, all that money, poof, evaporates. All that wealth evaporates in an instant.
So, and this is what James Carville was talking about the other day. The ex-Clinton advisor in his campaign. And James Carville's been around for a long time, and actually I enjoy listening to him, even though I'm not a Democrat, but I enjoy what he has to say. I think he's very relevant, and he's worried that Sanders and folks like Warren are pushing, and these are his words, stupid ideas in the Democratic Party right now. And he's worried that none of these programs can work. They're not going to work. They don't have an economic solution to these. They will not be specific in how to make it work, except you can rest assured with one thing. Even though Bernie won't talk about it, and he said this is really, really going to help. We're going to really get those people and get the middle class working. Well, the very, very wealthy will not be affected because they can take care of themselves. They can go somewhere else. But the average American, the middle class American, lower end of the spectrum, the blue collar workers, they are going to be devastated because every one of these things refer to increase in taxes. And that's the stupidity that Carville is talking about. They're economic, not viable. and they increase taxes. They erode the bottom line for every American individual here. And the truth of the matter is, let's figure this one out. To do what they're doing, to go to single payer, after all, everyone's got to have health care. What percent of the population doesn't have health care right now? I mean, really, I'm asking that. What percent, as of right now, do we think do not have health care?
It's about 20 to 30 million do not have health insurance. And, of course, a significant chunk of those some of those are eligible for insurance, and they either haven't signed up or chose not to enroll.
Right,
and
they elect not to do it.
Some of those are undocumented immigrants as well who are in the country illegally.
Okay, so what's the universe then? We have 20, and I agree with you, 20 to 30 million people out there that I shouldn't even use the word health care. That's wrong, because you won't have health care. You'll have coverage, but God knows for what. So you got 20 to 30 million people out of a universe of how many who do have health care?
You're right. You've got about 90 to 95% of the population that has insurance. Currently.
So let's get back. Hello, Mr. Carville. So what he's saying is that, let me think. So we're going to take 90%. We'll even downsize it a little bit just to please say 90% of the country is doing okay. They've got their plan. They're happy. Most of it comes from the employer. They're juicing. They're great. Everyone's going forward. They're going. But we're going to eliminate 100 and some odd million folks out there who have health plans and say, we got to help the 10%. Now, would any business be run that way?
No, and that was how we ended up with Obamacare. We had a problem with Obamacare on pre-existing conditions because a small percentage of the population couldn't get insurance. And so what did we do? We ended up spending hundreds of billions of dollars, created this huge website that didn't work, threw millions of people off their plans, raised premiums for a lot of people, all to help this narrow sliver of the population that had pre-existing conditions and could not get health insurance. This would be the same thing all over again.
So, Chris, how does this play in Nevada right now in the primary politics? It looks like some very powerful unions in Nevada says that they don't want this. They're not going to support this.
They're pushing back.
Are they? I mean, what's going to happen in Nevada next week?
It's very interesting, and I think you may end up seeing fireworks at the next debate between Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg is trying to attack Bernie Sanders on single payer, on Medicare for all. Mind you, Pete Buttigieg was for Medicare for all before he was against it, and said 2 years ago that he supported it indubitably and for the ages. Pete Buttigieg also wants to require people, he wants to bring back the individual mandate on steroids. He wants to not just fine people if they can't afford health insurance. He wants to make them pay for their full health insurance premium, whether they can afford it or not, whether they want health insurance or not. So he would bring back the individual mandate, and I suspect Bernie Sanders at some point will attack him on that issue, because if there's anything less popular than Obamacare in general, it's the individual mandate in particular. And the idea of fining people, taxing people thousands of dollars for health insurance won't go over well with primary voters in Nevada or voters in general.
So then what happens? Do you have any predictions next week of how Nevada goes?
I don't. I'm not a political prognosticator. We will certainly see. And there's been a great change of flux in the race just in the past couple of days. I think healthcare is going to continue to be an issue, and I think all of the Democratic solutions are ultimately designed to get us to single payer. Bernie is at least honest with the American people about the destination and the impact on the American people and the American healthcare system. I think there are other people like Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden that ultimately want us to get to a single payer system. They just want to take a little bit longer to get us there than Bernie Sanders would.
Well, that'd be a tectonic shift in presidential politics if the unions start to move away from the Democrats because of Medicare for all, which means it means medicine for none in the end.
Well, all of it means medicine for none, if you think about it.
That's right.
I mean, this cut to the chase.
Hey, Chris, thanks for being on the show. Chris Jacobs, founder and CEO of the Juniper Research Group. Chris, you've been wonderful.
Thanks very much for having me.
Stay with us, Rich. Hey, it's time. I can't believe it's segment 5. The time has gone by so quickly. Rich and I still got a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, a lot happened in the past week. Well, at the very, very beginning of the week, there were the Oscars. And, you see, they're really becoming quite irrelevant, right? I mean,
no one watches
it looks
them.
Like the country
the numbers are terrible.
Is like being turned off. You got all of these Hollywood, egotistic maniacs up there lecturing us, us poor little pawns in the game here about what we should be doing and thinking and so forth. And amazing, you get someone I guess who worked for Obama, workers
they
of the
actually
world
look
unite.
like the Coneheads. I was stunned when I saw. I thought it was Saturday Night Live.
Unite.
At it. Yeah.
I mean, he looks like he's auditioning for Bernie.
Yeah. No, it's just amazing. This is so typical Obama. He's going to do a documentary on American manufacturing, Neil. So what does he do? He picks a manufacturing company that seems to be suffering. God knows if it really is, but it seems to be suffering. And the economy, of course, is the anti-Trump. The economy is not working for these people. And the answer to all of this, listening to the director and the producers that he worked with for this, who, by the way, shaved their heads. I thought it was Jane Curtin. I got very confused for a while. I really did. I mean, what the heck? Eddie Murphy came back and figured maybe she came back. So they're out there and they're saying, but this will all end when the workers of the world unite. Now, where does that come from? That comes from the Communist Manifesto written in the 19th century by Karl Marx. That's their motto. Workers of the world unite. And I'll tell you what, why don't all the stars of Hollywood take their billions and millions of dollars and give it to everybody? Why should the gaffer on the film make less money than them? After all, don't they want to unite? We should be uniting. I think that we should be uniting. Give them the checkbook. Unite it. Unite them and reunite them with the checkbook and some money. Terrible.
But it looks like, the people aren't buying it. I mean, just people are turned off. I mean, you tune in, you want to, kind of watch this, kind of learn about what's going on there and with the movies and the entertainment industry and what's out there.
Brad Pitt let it off in the first few minutes of the show.
Lectured, yeah.
Brad Pitt. Hey, I only have 45 seconds to speak, which is 45 seconds more than, the Senate gave John Bolton last week. He has no idea what he's talking about. No idea whatsoever. Why John Bolton should or should not, where the witnesses go. There are no witnesses. You don't have to have witnesses in the Senate. That's not the way the construction is formed. The trial, really, with witnesses and developing the evidence and making the charges, belongs in the House. And then the Senate is the jury. There doesn't have to be anything else beyond that. Don't do the work of the House in the Senate. That's the way our forefathers envisioned it. But, of course, Brad Pitt doesn't know that. I will say he was interesting to watch in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I like watching Brad Pitt. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a lot of fun. I think he's really good. But, man, Joaquin Phoenix,
ooh.
I didn't know what to do to even understand Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
I look at my wife and say, what is he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about.
I read his remarks like 3 times, and I'm saying, I don't get it.
No, you don't get it because one has to drop Osley acid to understand what he's talking about. I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. It's not good. We have to have this, and I shouldn't have milk. All you people have milk on your cereal. Well, yeah, I kind of do that. Elsie the cow visits my house every day in the morning. So what is that all about? We're going to make the world safer and better because they're not going to have milk on your cereal anymore, which, by the way, should scare the hell out of Battle Creek, Michigan and Kellogg's. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I got to tell you, crazy stuff. Hey, but also, there was McClatchy newspapers files for bankruptcy protection.
Amazing. Well, I thought those on the left were doing well.
The death
why aren't they getting it?
Of the newspapers.
It's amazing. McClatchy newspapers, which owns a paper right down here in South Florida, they're filing for bankruptcy protection. It's telling you something. It's telling you something.
Like, this all came about this week because Warren Buffett sold a huge portfolio of newspapers.
He doesn't favor it anymore,
right?
But I bet he uses milk in the morning.
But you know, it's maybe in the end, and maybe this is not a bad idea. You'll have the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, you know, and will everything else go? I mean, USA Today. I mean, you know, who needs it? The L.A. Times, the Chicago Tribune. I mean,
you don't need all those because they all say the same thing anyway.
Yeah,
and there's only one voice for everything. They use the same nouns, the same verbs, and the same structures of the sentences. We can do transformational grammar on it.
But I hope the New York Post sticks around.
I like
they're pretty fun.
You know what? Because their covers are great.
That's right.
Great. Everyone should go out and look at the New York Post. Great covers.
Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.